So y'all want to take a function of the Dominion with me? Um, Elon Musk stokes speculation after Twitter. Well, all right, let's get into it. Let's go to Erica.
It's time to take action. Start by talking to your doctor's
So we can have some
Discovery
fun
rep.
today in
Whether
Dalport.
you and your doctor just started your Discovery journey or have been here since the beginning.
Demonology, like all aspects of religious mythology, shifts, alters, and transforms through history. As we've seen in my episode on Israelite demonology, the demonic
The
population,
teacher.
as it were, of ancient Israel was surprisingly low compared to their neighboring civilizations in Mesopotamia and in Egypt. That would, of course, all change
To the
in
church,
centuries
they don't
following the
usually like it.
Babylonian exile starting around 586
The Rome
BCE,
sometimes don't like
with the
it. We'll
rise
get
of
into
what
that, I'm
scholars
sure.
now call the apocalyptic mode of Judaism. The population of both angels and demons just positively exploded. From the books of Enoch, the New Testament, and the sectarian
Brother's
scrolls
uncle,
found at
mother's
Qumran,
cousin, I tell you.
the entire universe became filled with such metaphysical
Well, luckily we
beings
live in this
locked
2020,
in combat,
not 80
all of which
BC,
would culminate
year
in a
North
final
Korea.
eschatological battle at the end of time. As the explosive magma of the apocalyptic cooled, so too did this intense and baroque attention paid to angels and demons. Early Christianity, while
Elon.
attesting to
Function
such
of the
beings, began the early process of systematically arranging their angelology and their demonology. That process, though, in rabbinical Judaism, on the other hand,
So he's
was
in a superposition at all points of time,
rather
right?
more complex.
Where is he? It
In
is
this episode, I want to
8:48. Do you
explore
know
the
where your aircraft
demonology
carrier is
as
right
much
now?
as there is one demonology in rabbinic literature, specifically in the Talmud. While dozens of narratives concern demons, is
The
there
answer is no.
a systematic
Booty.
demonology to be found in the early rabbinic literature? How does geographic and cultural difference in this period
We'll get to
have
it.
an impact on the
Yeah, you-
development
yeah.
of demonological literature among the early rabbis? Let's explore the
I would have to
demonology
teach you how to
of
write
the
some stuff. Like,
Talmud.
this is a key
If
and a
you're interested
prefix.
in
This
magic,
is
Hermetic philosophy,
a very specific
alchemy,
writing.
Kabbalah, or the history of the occult,
One of my
make
favorite
sure
ones
to
I learned
subscribe
from
and
him was
check out my
that
other
Vol Bloods
numerous
on a
content on
penny in the
topics of
girls' locker
esotericism,
room amongst you and the
including
boys to
curated
help you
playlists.
get money and
Also,
women.
if you want to support my work of providing accessible,
Salt circle.
scholarly, and free content on topics in esotericism here on YouTube for free, maybe you consider supporting my work on Patreon with a one-time donation or with the super thanks that you can find just below the video. Again, you can find those links below, and I really appreciate your consideration of supporting the channel and the project of
You
making
just can't go
esoterica
bowl and
widely
go. This
available.
is salty,
But now,
or sharps and salty, which
Let's
is
turn to the demons
okay.
that haunt
Sexual
the
harassment
complex,
officer,
multi-layered
drill sergeant Jordan
pages
Mason.
of the
Okay.
Talmud. I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and
Team
welcome
out there
to
sharpening his
Esoterica,
axe. You kidding
where
me?
we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion.
Who's up? I'm human. I'm flesh, bone, and blood, bud. Why? Because I said human. That's why. Stone Mason, but yeah, I mean. Because I just walk in there and do the rock. They can't stop that. That's.
Before turning to the demons of the Talmud, it's first best to
Thank you,
understand just what the
79.
Talmud is. Despite what you might have heard, the Talmud is not a commentary on the Hebrew Bible or the Christian Old Testament, though many of those certainly existed at that time. To understand it, we need to
One
head
of the-
back to the first century of the
We're here to
Common
learn
Era,
the words of the
following
time
the Great
frame
Revolt
because
of
we might
66
hit
to
somebody from
73
that
of the
time
Common
frame,
Era,
not out
which
in the
is also
multi-world
basically
universe.
a civil war in which Jewish forces fought to eject the Roman colonial presence from their homelands and
Jewish
also
kicking out the Rome.
fight themselves for whatever reason.
Fight themselves for
Subsequent
whatever
destruction
reason.
of the Jerusalem Temple in 70,
Destruction
and
of the Senate. I mean,
Messianic
Jerusalem
insurrection
Talmud.
led by Shimon Bar Kokhba, and of course the Roman genocides that followed all of this.
Function of the
The
Dominion. This
surviving
sounds
Jewish
familiar,
religious
yes?
establishment came to the very sober assessment
Look
that
at
the
not
very
just
religion
what
of
happened.
Judaism
There was
facing
Jewish
an
bosses that
existential
got broke,
crisis.
fucking fought people,
They could
whether
just
their
all
own
be
turned on them or the
wiped
Romans
out.
turned
The
on them,
temple was
or
destroyed.
their
Messianic
own or
expectations
infighting
were completely
at the time on
smashed.
eschatology, the function of
Jesus
the Dominion.
movement, their expectations were still going good. Judaism was effectively banned in its own homeland, Roman pogroms killed entire Jewish population centers,
I get out there
and Jewish religious
and I hit that
figures
board.
and leadership were being systematically hunted down and murdered. It sounds like regular old Jewish history.
No day in the family.
That's so grim. In the face of this titanic political and theological catastrophe, the surviving Jewish religious authorities, the rabbis basically being the only ones still standing, the rest had just been wiped out, they began
National
the process
Hardwood
of
Grader
writing down
Association.
what up to that point was only
One of the few things that could take a run at field theory.
including both the accepted practices and debates around the religious practices current to their day. Of course, while the Hebrew Bible and the Torah filled with religious laws, the nature of their fulfillment is rather vague. Thus, when work is prohibited on the Sabbath, the natural question there might be, well, what is exactly constitutive of work? The debates and answers to those questions were taken to be the oral Torah, the Torah Shebaal Peh, an authoritative companion to the written Torah, equally bequeathed to Moses at Sinai, at least according to the rabbis who were putting it together and arguing for their own authority.
We're going to talk about some warp entities here in a minute.
Compiling and editing this
not because, again,
is known as the
old tradition,
Mishnah.
rip it up real hot.
Series of volumes
There's certain ways to do it. I'm not going to be able to pull that off.
However, the Mishnah itself is both highly technical and terse, leaving still further questions unresolved. In the following centuries, rabbinical academies in both the Galilee and the Sasanian Empire over there in what is now Iraq, Iran, produced a further commentary on the Mishnah. These two commentaries form the basis of the Talmuds. Talmud, yes, Talmuds, plural. There are two of them. The Jerusalem Talmud composed earlier, around 400 of the Common Era, and the more standard, complete Babylonian Talmud redacted through the 7th century of the Common Era as well. The Mishnah, the two Talmuds, along with the Baraita and the Tosefta, these are both para-Mishnaic literature.
It gets good to have a very vast library. I think it starts with it's right up there with the Hermetic. They're like
Judaism,
right next to the Book of Enoch in there.
Of volumes. The nucleus here is.
They are different by time on cuneiform. The Book of the Mother is Enoch. It's the one I want you to focus on, Space Marine.
Topic of the episode. For that, we would have to add the Jewish magical literature,
your mother's volume,
world,
Queen's Crown.
Some of which has been preserved
It'd
in
be like
the
life
synagogue
and putting
the
it to paper.
there in Cairo, along with the corpus of Jewish incantation bowls meant for trapping demons and evil spirits, primarily produced in the Sasanian context over there in what is now Iraq, around Pumbedita and Sura, the main
right now, Ben using
Jewish academies in that region. Now, I've covered
the SCP Foundation, he could say 79, the Blinkety Lights at 078, SCP, Too Late to Die Young, as far as a Blinkety LED neon sign. But 55 is an anti-meme. Is that the gravity thing that he's talking about? Yes. And how do you know that? Because that maths. That bowl has a pottery making process, has a
being produced and employed through that region. They weren't exclusively Jewish. They were kind of used by everybody because demon problems are everybody's problems. But turning to the Talmud, one final thing
well,
to be noted,
it's to a certain degree, you'd say, is religion for people. They're kicking with each other to try to do it like that. When you actually can use revelations, you can use the Romans, the Anunnaki, the Mayans, there's a lot of good ones. And again, the LED pattern, what is Solomon's setup.
Rather, they record hundreds of years of conversations and debates between rabbinical authorities holding a wide range of opinions.
Remember, he's gonna. This is his dominion is going to be
the Talmud says,
I would imagine Judaism-led head model, so you can't just roll in there, Space Marine, with Space Marine.
Record of conversations and debates,
you have to have the fundamentals.
Many of which,
in parallel.
Most of which are not finally authoritative in Judaism. In fact, Jewish law, or halakha, wasn't definitively encoded until the mid-16th century.
They're burning it down,
later after the
running
Talmud,
the Roman Ninth Legion through.
And honestly, that process is still very much ongoing
42.
to
What
this
happened?
day.
What was
so just
going to
because
happen?
a rabbi declares this or that in the Talmud, and frankly and honestly, they can declare some pretty wacky, gross, even obscene,
These are, again, math
things,
problems. They're really good situational awareness models. Cut it off, don't cut it off, kill them, don't kill them.
Generally, unless you're an anti-Semite, like to take things out of
Then the
context,
rabbi
and make
gets
it
a
look like
hold of
Judaism is
it.
evil.
I'll be take a chew and pass
Don't
on
be
you in
that
the
guy.
middle.
In
Salt
fact,
you.
the early
Run you
rabbinical
over.
demonology is instructive on precisely this point.
Bulky
We have a
put you on
debate,
scale.
and much of the debate is between rabbis arguing about the nature and
Now,
function and
there's the scale
reality
guy.
of
Which
demons,
one's which?
and we
I don't
get a
know. Are you
wide
looking at bones right now?
of opinions. Now,
I'm
to
dead
my
there. Now you're
knowledge, the
dead.
Mishnah only contains one substantial mention
On the
of
day
demons.
off there,
in
you
a
still be
rather
working
late
the
Mishnah, and
whore
almost a
whore
kind
for
of
the core or
addendum,
something.
there is a famous list of things created by God on the eve of the first Sabbath.
Prisoner, you
and
didn't no
included
rest
in
for
that
the
list
wicked or the
are
very blessed.
Mazakim.
Some voodoo
These
lord they
literally
got,
mean
witch
the
doctor they got near the
damagers,
farmer,
or
of
the
course. Farmer.
harmers. This idea was such that these beings were
And
created
the spooky
in the
guy.
haste
It's like, if
leading
I'm
up
going to
to
be
the
playing
first
that, I
Sabbath, when work
can't put
is
pressure off it
forbidden,
and burn the house down.
even by God somehow, and will later be used to explain
They're smart,
why,
but
one,
again,
they
you
have no
gotta
physical
understand it
bodies.
was
God
probably
kind of
useful for Todd.
ran out of time making them, so they didn't
Get
get
out there in
bodies.
town.
Though
But what
there
am
are
I
actually
supposed to
debates
do?
in the
You're supposed to
Talmud
work
about
in the
just
field.
how many shadows these beings cast, despite not having bodies.
I love you.
And
Okay,
two,
I love you.
their
I kill you.
animosity toward human beings. They're jealous of us having bodies, so this is definitely not Gnostic. However,
I'm here to deal with you
another text
assholes all day
has
in the office.
Adam
and fucking
giving
pass
rise to
through.
what the text calls Ruchin Ushedim Uleilin, spirits, demons, and night demonesses during his 130-year-long punishment for that whole Garden of Eden bit. Though just how isn't clear, but
There's
it
one I
might
caught
be a
about
form of
the
masturbation.
rib of the
This
geodesics
is a
for
form of
Eve.
demon production later
like
also found in the Kabbalah,
night,
which
the Eve, the ark, the
unused
throw,
semen
it's a
becomes
hard one.
demons.
But about the apple and
Semen
pomegranate, some
demons.
asshole like me
But
comes around and
neither
starts
of these
talking to
two
your old lady when
wordsmiths
you
are
weren't watching.
definitive,
You
as
let her off the
witnessed by how
farm. Next
the
thing
two
you know,
Talmuds deal with these beings in general. The Jerusalem
yo,
Talmud,
you played this
for
game
instance,
before, have
contains
you? That's cool. That's
very
good.
little
Glad.
discussion on the
Keep a
nature
score.
of the demons and the
Pendrell,
tales about them.
Ryman Sphere.
Just not that interested in them. The Babylonian Talmud, however, is replete with dozens and dozens and dozens of such
Because
narratives.
Fermilab is not
In fact, the
useful
Babylonian
for the
Talmud
stone
is
mill
even
or psychology
self-conscious
at that
of this
level.
fact,
They come
noting
into
some
the
points
church,
that in the West,
they do
over there
magic in the
academies in the land of
555,
Israel,
shoot
such
them out.
interest doesn't seem to be, well,
Enriched.
much
we'll
of an
say.
interest over
Photons.
in Eretz Israel. In fact, much of the demonology of the Babylonian Talmud reflects the
It helps
cultural
to have
exchange and syncretism of Jewish communities living
Not
in a
enemies, at
larger Sasanian Persian context, and it's with the remains of ancient Near East mythology more generally. This is even noticed by the High Gaon a few centuries after the redaction of the Babylonian Talmud, such that he notes that the closer
Well, yeah,
that one
we could
were
say
to
I'm
the
friends with
center of
Salty, but he gets a
gravity of
little
Sasanian culture,
choppy in there.
the more one was prone to demonological speculation, and the further away the less and less, hence there being little interest in such matters in Palestine. Though that isn't strictly speaking true. It's not even true really at all,
Like,
because both Palestinian
you gotta
and
live the
Egyptian
lie, keep it
magical
going.
sources reveal
What do you think
a
I'm doing
clear,
right now?
educated interest in both angels and
It's
demons,
working.
but also interacting with them through magical means, as seen by texts like the numerous amulets found in the Geniza of the Ibn Ezra synagogue, and even some of the earliest Western magic
go. First law of
grimoires,
motion.
like the Sefer HaRazim and the Charba de Moshe. Now, there's no way I'm going to get through every single demonological
Hang on,
narrative
Patty.
from the Babylonian Talmud in this episode, and even again, if I could, that wouldn't represent some systematic treatment of
I thought you did
Talmudic
great.
demonology.
Don't undersell it.
Nothing like a Talmudic demonology that's systematically there in the Talmud. But
It doesn't
can
need
we
to be all the
generally
other ones
glean?
because it actually
the
follows the
Jerusalem Talmud
timeline
notes
that
there are
is
3 such species of demons: the Mazakim,
trying to find
the
one-eyed
Shadim,
Willie's
and the
treasure
Rochot.
out there with the
Though it
goons.
doesn't exactly make it
That
clear
would
how
be
these
that map you're basically getting right
are
here.
different from one another. Perhaps it's worth noting
You
that
could put
the
different things in
Mazakim
there.
are the damagers. That final
Demon.
noon, by the way,
Heresy.
Mazakim, tells us that grammatically we're
Alright,
in the world
thank
of
you very much, Esco
Mishnaic
Derek. I
Hebrew, not the
appreciate it.
classical Hebrew that you might expect.